Here's the first place we need to start. Let's actually start with BDS. I think it's actually the most fun team to talk about at the moment because the problem I have is this, Jensen. It's not at all that like, I'll watch them in here's the thing we do on the show as well, because they stupidly named the season. The split is like season is the part of the BO1s, then groups is the BO3s, and BO5 is the playoff. You just call it BO5s or BO1s. It's probably easier for this section, right? So when we were in the BO1 part, it's not that I didn't believe in BDS. It looked great. In fact, they could have even won some of the games they lost in that particular phase, originally almost like gone undefeated. The problem is you just expect experience level of the players. They obviously have a couple of fucking weird mistakes every now and then each game that could throw the whole game. People would just expect, as you increase the number of games, and especially like the more pressure, then they should be the team that falls apart, but they haven't. So what is your take on BDS? They're just legit at this point, miss. How are they so good?
I think there's a few things that we can look at over here, and one of the big trends I want to visit today is I had a war on tempo a few years ago, right? Today I'm going to go to war against this concept of strong side, right? I'm not trying to eliminate the word completely because I still think it's very useful in terms of how we describe things. But I think that people still talk about strong side in this modern day narrative in terms of like, oh, is this the guy we play towards? And it makes sense narratively. But if you look at the map control idea of the game, where people are playing a lot more in 2 lanes and things like that, it's not so much about who's a strong side player and a weak side player. The question is, how do we create a strong side of the map? And I think that that is why I enjoyed watching LEC so much this year, because you're seeing all these different ideas in terms of different philosophies and different setups in terms of how do we move on the map? Do we move out through side lane? Do we move out through mid? Is it about connecting the jungle and support? How tightly is the support and jungle connected? Or is it more of the 1-2 system that we saw a lot from Korea in the previous year as well? So BDS, I think this is team that I think was very well coached in terms of tactics wise, right? And I'm going to draw a football analogy over here, and people are going to wonder, oh, are you going to talk about Barcelona, Juventus, or one of those big teams? No, I'm actually not going to talk about one of those big teams because BDS is not a big team. I'm going to talk about Brighton, right? This is a team in the EPL that nobody, if you're outside of England itself, right? If you're outside of the UK itself, you probably have never really heard about this team. It's like in a footnote. Okay, Liverpool. In fact, Liverpool actually lost to this team twice this year. But the point is that this is a team that doesn't really have a star set of players, but they were using a very interesting tactical setup where they were just playing really slowly in the build-up of the play, and they were calling it defenders with starts on top of the ball, right? Which is something that's very unconventional in football, and they were using it to buy space and create space, so that they could use the tactics to do the work for them, so that their quality of players would not be as challenged as much in the more forward positions itself. And to bring things back into League of Legends context,
I'm definitely interested to see how you're going to explain that BDS players aren't challenged, but then again, enough about their social media. Continue.
Yeah, that's the idea as well, right? Where BDS is using all.
We'll be doing that every now and then, guys. If you've never seen one of my shows before, just keep going. Just keep up. Go on, Jensen. Keep going.
And BDS is using a lot of these tactical brilliancies to overcome for some of these issues, right? Like when they play against Koi in that series, Koi, I think this is a team that they have to really create a lot of pressure. The bot lane Trimby has definitely been the MVP for them this split so far. And if Trimby and Comp, they play up with power to create a lot of pressure in bot lane by winning a bot lane 2v2, then they're able to then influence the game. So what do? They sack Adam's first TP, they let Adam fall a little bit behind, they do the silent strategy with the double jungle once again, and then there's all this pressure, right? It's one of those very classic bring out the coaching book of dark arts, look through it and I say, hey, okay, there's this interesting silver bullets and these are the ways that we can solve towards that. And I think the BDS, they have a very clear team identity. We play for Pyro and bot lane, we're going to use that to then achieve the a Drake stacking win condition, and then they understand their team fight conditions around the dragon pretty well as well. So I don't have a lot of major complaints when it comes to BDS. We can talk. I think there's like 1 or 2 fatal flaws that if this is a team that somehow goes to an international event, right? So I thought they actually had a decent chance of doing it. But if the championship points requires them to be in first place and things like that, then it's a little bit of a shame, because I'd really like to see how this team would fare against the international competition, right? This is back in the day. I wouldn't say back in it, like 2-3 years back, when all the LPL teams, it was super idiosyncratic, right? The LPL teams are still kind of idiosyncratic, but there's a little bit more of amalgamation these days. But when you had like TES was very distinctly TES, the DoNB team was very distinctly a DoNB style, and the rookie team was a very distinctively rookie style team. And And it was always so interesting to see which of these teams would go up and play against international competition. I was hoping we would see the same thing at BDS as well, and see how well these Korean teams, see how well the LPL teams, or even the NA teams, right, how well they would adapt to all these shenanigans that they can bring out.
Come on, Dom, where you at on BDS? Like, they actually are the truth now, aren't they? Like, we can't really deny it.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing a lot better than I expected. I mean, one of the things that I was predicting in best of series is that Adam would be worse, and I think that that's actually happened, but the rest of the team is just compensating. I feel like all the strength that Adam had somehow just went to Nuck, and now Nuck is just performing like he's one of the best mid laners in the league. I don't actually believe he's one of the best mid laners in the league. That's why I always say performing.
I know.
Because Sheo and Nuck, I mean, if you just look at the way they play the game, they might be the best mid jungle that we've seen so far. But do I actually believe that they're that good at their core? Like, do I think that, you know, in 3 splits, you know, Nuck is going to be better than Caps, and like we're going to just be in like the Nuck era? I mean, I don't know. I just refuse to believe that I'm going to have to keep on saying Nuck for 900 days or some shit and praising him. So that's one thing that I think BDS has kind of struggled with, is their top lane champion pools. I mean, they seem pretty much exposed. I mean, the Olaf game was probably Adam's best game this weekend. He got solo killed in that one. Then he actually got a solo kill back, so he stabilized in that one. But I thought the Darius pick was just terrible. Like the Darius pick into Olaf, or into Gnar, sorry. I think that this is just a really weird angle. I don't think you ever want to play Darius if Gnar is up. In the modern era, at least with the current items, like maybe when you had old Stridebreaker where you had that mini dash, that was a way that you could play this matchup. But I think that the way that they draft champions is really surprising top lane. It's almost like they just have like a notepad that says, if Olaf's up, we draft Olaf. If not, we go Darius. If not, we go Set. If Set is bad for the game, we go Renekton. If Renekton is bad, we go Malphite. If all of those don't look good, we go Sion. And it's just, they go through that. You know, maybe they get a fucking Jarvan counter pick that looks like he's first time get in the game. But I feel like that's a very concerning trend, because I don't think that they're actually picking things that are coherent in the game. A lot of times I just see like Adam getting one of his champions, and it's like he doesn't, I guess in these games, he doesn't need to perform for them to win. But I just doubt that Sheo's going to be like 10-0 on Vi consistently enough where you're not going to need to, like, you're essentially able to get away with the game 4v5. So that's an issue I see with BDS. And then also they are falling behind in gold. I mean, they're winning these games because they have such insane drag control. I think they were like 16-0 on drags or something like absolutely absurd in the 4 games they played. But it's not always possible to just get dragon all the time. Like if teams draft in certain ways, and especially with the way that they prioritize their champs, I just don't think that it's a consistently viable condition. And obviously in a lot of these games, they're able to get soul, and that kind of compensates for the gold that they're down in the game, and they end up winning anyway. But yeah, I just feel like there's still some weird aspects of BDS where you just feel like this is exploitable, you know, like this type of playstyle is just not consistent. And then also I would like to see if teams tried banning out Sheo if he had a viable champion pool outside of, you know, the Vi, the Sejuani, the Wukong. I think he's really good on these picks. He doesn't strike me as the type of jungler that would be able to just play everything all the time. For example, if we see like Sheo Lee Sin come out, is he going to be able to perform as like one of the best junglers in the league on Lee Sin compared to, you know, Bo or some of the other people that we have still, you know, in contention here? So I need to see more. I have to see when teams draft differently against them, because I feel like this is one of the things that will happen. With Adam playing a little bit worse, and, you know, with people becoming more confident in being able to play counters instead of it just being like, oh no, you can't give him Olaf or Darius, he'll win every game no matter what. I felt like that was a little bit of an overreaction, where now we're starting to meet somewhere in the middle where it's like, no, I mean, if he wants to play Olaf into Kennen like every game or some shit, just let him play Olaf into Kennen. Just play fucking Kennen and just like, you know, win the game. Play Gnar into these matchups, and just don't let him take those free solo kill angles, or don't let him like flash on you and get a free kill in the lane phase, and you'll just be able to outpace. So I think the teams will adapt how they view BDS after these series of games, because before I think Adam was a focal point, where now I think people are going to focus more on Sheo's champion pool, and they'll also focus on ways to limit the bot lane, because I feel like the bot lane is the most legit part of BDS.
Oh, easily. In fact, I even think like to be fair, I probably don't even give props enough to Labrov. It's not even that he's been like out of this world, but he's been pretty consistently good. Like I very rarely notice games where I'm like, what the hell's he doing?
I mean, he had a terrible Renata game this this week where like he almost solo ruined the game. I mean, he queued and he tried to pull it and then he ulted backwards and then suddenly like the whole game exploded when they had massive control. So that was rough. I mean, I think the way that he conceptualizes Renata ults scares me. It seems like when you look at Renata, I mean, you just have to, Renata Nami, you have to just throw these abilities that are relatively slow traveling at positions on the map to force people to not walk through like these chokes. Like, I mean, it's what we said earlier. It's like these abilities are almost made for certain sections of the map. If you look at like the width of entrances into river or the width of the path behind blue buff, these are perfect locations to be throwing Renata. And you see him use it like almost like he's trying to hit a skill shot where he positions it where the center of the ult is on the center of the enemy champion he's aiming for, instead of just like ulting a corridor and making them choose, oh, either you walk into the ult or you have to choose to walk into our team and die. I feel like these are like some issues that I'm seeing with the Brav, but I would say that Crowny just looks insanely legit. I mean, he just looks like either the best or the second best AD carry in the entire league.
Yeah. No, the key thing for me is not only does he almost every single week just play really, really well as well, but they actually as a team obviously understand their identity, like they play to him. So I think they just do a great job. Like the funny thing is, every single thing that sounds like a knock on this team is essentially just like what you're supposed to do as a professional. Like they look like they have a decent read on, well, they're very good at one point, read on the meta. Whether they can execute it's the other question probably on that one. But like, that's the problem with the whole Shio Nook thing, Dom, is even though people are going to think it's haterism, I not only can't get past it, I won't get past it. And this is the problem.
I mean, his name is fucking Nuck. Like, come on.
That's
he
not great in
to
itself.
Nuck.
I know.
Like,
and also, if you don't want to be called Knock, don't go around saying stuff about how you're going to suck. That was literally your whole angle. Like, you're playing into that, isn't it? So here's the problem, right? Like, if people saw the tweet that these guys got triggered by, it's so
I can't see it because I'm like blocked. But,
it's so tame, mate. It's so pathetic. Like, basically, I just did a tweet where literally it wasn't even as spicy as this show would be. I just said, like, basically, if you're Knock, I hope you're just savoring this time period because, like, at some point you're going to be on a normal team again in the future. It's going to be back to reality, isn't it? Because I'm with you, Dom. The problem with this, I'd say that I can't say he isn't playing better. He is playing really well. He's playing about as well as it's possible he can play. It's just when I watch with the eye test, I don't believe it's actually real. Like, essentially, he's like one of those weird people on YouTube that have figured out how to like use like fucking contouring and like eyeshadow to make fake abs or something. It's like, look, they look sick. The abs do look, and the depth, if you turn that angle, yeah, that does look great. I can't lie, it looks mega. And he's lifted up something that does say like, it might be a cartoon weight, but it does say like 150 kilograms. Like, well, he's doing it, Tom. He's fucking killing it. I just don't believe it's real. The problem is like, basically, I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be the meta swap that a lot of these champions do seem to go into his wheelhouse right now. I'll say that. I'd be interested to see a mid lane meta swap. If he went to MSI, I think he'll get brutalized. I'll just say it. And the last thing I'll say on the Nook Shio angle is, even though people are going to think it's to hate on Nook, I actually just think the Shio guy's way better than I originally thought he was. I think he's the player that sort of like grown on me over time when I watched this squad. So just a good team. The problem is though, if you have a player like Adam who just has obvious idiosyncratic flaws in his game, you have someone like Nock sooner or later is going to have to play a different meta in mid lane, and it's going to be a different like. Eventually, it just feels like it's inevitable. They can't be the best team for real. But if they are now, I'll give it up to them. It's basically like if you watch the other big leagues, there's always one team like this. Like in LPL, maybe EDG was going to be the best team, maybe. But you look at the lineup and you're like, they don't really have the players you think are going to win the MVP, win the final, dominate someone in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So if BDS can get past all that, I'll tip my hat. And right now, like, fuck it. I'll give credit as well. I did say this group looked really dangerous for them, but they've fucking won it. So I've got to give it to them. Jensen, what do you think on the team in this sense? Like, are we hating on some of these players? You actually think these players are good? Where are you at on them?
I think they're just good in this very specific meta at this very specific point of time and where all the teams are at the moment, right? Because I think that for some of the teams in the LEC, they're still trying to figure things out. So this actually reminds me a lot of IG at the start of the split in the LPL, right? Where they were just scoring all these mad wins over some of the top teams and they were having all these cheesy shenanigans as well.
Well, it's pretty much only EDG, but yeah.
Yeah, it was EDG, but at one point of time, people were asking, is IG in conversation with the YSKM guy? being up there, right? So I would say that is one analogy I draw to. The other is RA, right? RA in 2021, not the current RA. Current RA is terrible. I'm talking about the one that almost went to Worlds, right? Where it's the same idea. They knew the identity. Was it Fofo? I remember they just played a lot of Jinx Zoe, right? The idea was that Jinx got Prio, that secured the first Drake, then Zoe would secure Drakes 2, 3, 4 for them, and that was kind of the general game plan that they had over there. So it's the patch is something that is definitely in favor for them, and with how short the LEC split is at the moment, where it's they split it up into 3 splits, right? So there's like winter, spring, and summer now, and because of how short spring split is, it's like you can just be really good on a certain series of patches, or you can just be really good for a certain point of time, and then that can actually make you deceive the eye test to a lot of people, right? So I would say that this group is actually a very strong stylistic matchup for them, right? Like the way that they play, they're very good at taking control of the map because of the things that we talked about. They're very well coached, and they connect support and jungle on the initial move into this. So against a Koi, which is a 3-lane team, they're naturally going to dominate them, right? Because they're always going to take this free space, and Koi is always going to have to give up the mid push. They're always going to have to give up the jungle control when BDS walks into them. Now, the problem in this is like what Dom is saying, and it's not just the way that Labrov is casting his spells. I'm just watching his movement in these games, and he's not holding hands with his jungler like some of the ways that the good support and jungle players in the LPL do, or even if we go to Astralis, then we'll talk about that a little bit as well. So in this idea of strong side, they're good at creating a strong side through connecting this manpower advantage and using it to control the jungle. But once they get control of the area of the map, they tend to split up a little bit more, and I really don't like what Labrov is doing, where sometimes I wonder if he is just being pulled around by his teammates too much, and he's walking to his mid laner for no reason, he's walking to his AD carry for no reason, and then Shield now is Shield has to take a fight without his support being behind him, and that's something that I think is a little bit one of the areas where if they play against a team that is going to attack them in this regard, like a G2 or a Vitality, where they would struggle a little bit more.
Yeah, I think there's other issues with the gameplay, but then also I would say that to Thorin's point about Sheo impressing him, I've actually felt the opposite, where I feel like Nuck is the player that's grown on me, because I really thought he was going to struggle with this patch specifically, because it felt like BDS before, part of the way that they would compensate for their issue of never playing around mid too much, like in the regular season where like Adam was playing to his carry champions, and even though Sheo would grief Adam, sometimes he was going top a lot, he was making sure the bot was always stable, was they would always just slam Azir. They would play Azir almost every single game. Every time it's up, they're playing it, and Azir is really self-sufficient, and you can really just do everything on Azir. Not only are you self-sufficient in terms of like you don't need help, you don't need push outs at certain points, but then also on top of that, you have the ability to set up ganks. So if there's ever an angle, you could trade flashes. You scale well, so you don't need a lot of resources in order to perform. But I felt like in these games, like I was really surprised with the fact that Nuck was just out laning Larson on Cassio versus Ori, because normally I've been told that's like or from what I've observed, it's been a very Ori favored matchup. Now, I do think that this is probably one of the points where Ori is the weakest in comparison to Cassio in like all of history, because if you think about other metas, you didn't have Roa coming in, you didn't have Seraphs being like this OP at the same time as Roa, so now you don't really have like as much damage on Ori to deal with the Cassio. But in terms of how the early lane was played, I don't know how Larson was forced to take like such an early bad base where Cassio was just pushing him out. And then in the game number 1, I thought his Syndra play was actually pretty good. I mean, even though Sheo, I think like there's time, like he looks like he's playing really well in a lot of the games, and he is playing well at portions, but then he does a lot of things that makes me think that he's not really thinking about the game. So for example, he's in the first game, he's playing like the Vi into Trundle, and I think that Trundle is literally the worst pick possible here. I think it literally just makes the game a complete 4v5. I mean, you're lucky that they draft a tank top, or it's just going to be completely miserable for you. So I was really surprised to see Sheo see a Trundle and then be like, yeah, this is the game where I'm going full tank Vi. I would think that in that game, when he has like a Jarvan on his team, when he has, I believe that was the pentakill for crowning the Zeri game, I would assume that would be just one of the best cleaver like angles that a player could see, but for some reason he didn't want to take it. So I was a little bit like, I don't know, there's sometimes where I see things like that and I'm like, it makes me feel like they're just not aware of all the things that are going on in the game, or they're kind of just going through the motions.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.